Man makes an interesting discovery when he reads the letter next to the dog. Eric Mao's ordinary walk in the park took an interesting turn. He could have never imagined this happening. As a screenwriter, Eric travels the whole world. Someone who lives life to the fullest is one way to describe him. He visits numerous interesting countries to write stories about them. But when he's in his home country, what he enjoys most is taking long walks in the park. All of Eric's dreams have always come true except for one which was impossible. He loves dogs, but having his own just wasn't possible. When you're away from home as often as Eric, it's simply not an option. Dogs are great, but they need lots of attention. And unfortunately, not everyone realizes this. Ever since he was young, it's been Eric's dream to be the proud owner of a loyal man's best friend. This dream of taking care of a dog often left him feeling down. Whenever Eric came across dog owners with their furry friends in the park, he felt a wave of sadness come over him. He even found himself at the pet store from time to time, but always decided to walk away empty-handed. To help lessen that feeling of sorrow, Eric spent a lot of time in the animal shelter. Here, he could be surrounded by the loving animals and even feel like he had his own dog for a while. It helped him get over the feeling of wanting his own dog when he was there, but the minute he sat down on the couch at home, the feeling came back. What could he do to be happy even though he'd never be able to have his own dog because of his work? Should he quit his work as a screenwriter? It would be a shame considering how hard he's worked for it. His job pays extremely well and allows him to travel around the whole world. But is work that important that you should let it hold you back from making your dreams come true? These were questions that were always on Eric's mind. Eric could spend hours thinking about his future. While he's working, there's no doubt in his mind that he loves his job. When he's lying in the park and sees dog owners with their dogs, however, he starts to wonder. Having a dog would make him happier than anything. Is having lots of money and trips around the world really worth it? Eric talked to lots of people around him about his dream to be a dog owner. One day, he was talking to a vet about how badly he wanted to have his own dog, and the vet gave him a great idea. It was such a good idea that Eric immediately sprang into action. What did he do? He decided to make a career switch. And no, Eric didn't decide to give up his job as a screenwriter. He decided to do this part-time so he could try out another job part-time as well. You already know what's coming. Eric decided to get a job at a dog walking company. This would allow to take care of multiple dogs and let them out. He would get to experience all the joys of having a dog, but without all the responsibility. When he's not working, he wouldn't have to be there for them. Eric lives right next to a huge park and always loves taking walks here. It's a park with several different paths. There are large fields of grass, paths through the forest, and areas where dogs can run free. Eric always saw lots of dog owners with their furry friends running around in that area and got sad that he didn't have any reason to go over there. Eric didn't have a dog, so why would he go to the field where the dogs could run around? But thanks to his new job as a dog walker, Eric was able to explore tons of new areas and paths in the park. Taking dogs out here became a part of his daily routine, so after a while he had a close bond with the dogs that he took care of every day. The dogs loved Eric so much, maybe even more than they loved their owners. Two dogs that Eric let out daily were Goda and Lily. He let Goda and Lily out multiple times per week and had built up a good bond with the two. Both dogs love running around and are full of energy every time they visit the park. Throwing sticks, picking them up, and bringing them back. Eric loved doing all of these things with the dogs. One day, Goda and Lily weren't in the mood to listen to him. The two dogs refused to go with him. They were still full of energy and didn't want to leave the park. Eric still had some time to kill, so he took the scenic route home. He chose a path back on the other side of the park so he could have a bit more time with the dogs, but he didn't expect to come across something like this. Eric decided to take the dogs to a quiet spot in the park. There's a waterfall here. It's a spot where people out walking take a little break to eat a sandwich. You won't find too many people with dogs here, simply because it's such a quiet spot. While Eric is walking through this calm area of the park, he hears something rustling behind a tree. He's in a park, so it could be anything. But Eric decides to take a peek, due in part to the fact that he saw that the dogs also knew there was something behind the tree. He never expected to see what he found there. To his surprise, behind the tree, Eric saw a big black and white pit bull. The rather chubby pit bull was tied to the tree and looked calmly at Eric. Around her, there was nobody to be found, so it seemed pretty likely that she had been abandoned there. You might expect an abandoned dog to make quite a scene, but there was no loud barking going on here. The dog looked at Eric lovingly and even wanted to play with the other dogs Eric was with. Because the dog was so well trained, Eric assumed that the owner would come back any minute now. Why would you leave such a good dog behind in a forest? Eric decided to wait on the dog's owner for a while. He waited and waited, but after half an hour, nobody had shown up. To find out if the dog's owner wasn't just somewhere close by in the park, maybe chatting with someone, Eric decided to call out for them. "Hello, hello," he shouted numerous times. "Hello," he yelled once more, but just as you might expect, nobody shouted back. The other dogs, Goda and Lily, started to get antsy. They wanted to go home and started pulling Eric. Eric got a bad feeling in his stomach. He couldn't just leave this sweet dog here, right? He knew he needed to take action, but what exactly he didn't know. Was he just supposed to take the dog with him? Because of his passion for dogs, Eric knows how to handle them well. He wanted to approach the pit bull, but considering their tempers, he wasn't too sure if it was a good idea. It was possible that despite the sweet look in her eyes that this dog hadn't been well trained. He approached the dog carefully, especially since he had the two other dogs with him. He didn't want to put Lucy and Goda in harm's way. Eric was anxious at first because pit bulls can be extremely dangerous, but the closer he got to the dog, the calmer he felt. The dog also started walking slowly towards Eric. The two got closer and closer to each other without there being any aggressive tension in the air. Eric stayed calm, so the pit bull followed suit. Eric got closer and closer, which is when he made a surprising discovery. Eric kept getting closer to the dog, so close in fact that he could nearly touch her. The dog stayed calm. It seemed as if she expected Eric to get that close. Eric got more confident and kneeled down. Was he really going to pet the dog? Or would this be too much for an abandoned dog? He followed his gut. It felt right, so he went ahead and did it. He looked the pit bull right in the eyes and saw something special. The dog had a certain look in his eyes. He had a sad gaze. The pit bull had pain in its eyes and seemed to be sad. Eric pet the dog and calmed him down. He petted him on the head and looked around. What was this dog's story? He kept looking around until he saw a small letter on the tree above the dog. At eye level, Eric saw a small letter with a short text. The letter was taped to the tree and only had a few lines to read. From the letter, Eric could see that the pit bull's name was Mama's. Besides that, he read something that he understood immediately. The letter said that the dog was very friendly. The dog's name and character were now clear. Mama's was a friendly dog, but why would someone leave this sweet dog all alone in a quiet part of the park? Had she done something wrong? Was the owner no longer able to take care of her? Eric didn't understand. How could you abandon such a sweet and innocent dog? On top of that, pit bulls aren't cheap dogs. Someone must have been truly hopeless, or something else was wrong. Eric couldn't quite wrap his head around the situation. He started to reread the letter to make sure he had read it correctly. All sorts of questions popped into his mind, so he grabbed the letter to read it carefully. Eric discovered that there was more to the letter than he had initially expected. There was more text on the letter. "Take me home. I'm a great dog," were the first two sentences he saw next. Underneath that, there was a bit more text, but Eric had to look carefully to be able to read it. Because the letter had been taped to the tree, some of the letters were illegible in certain spots. Eric took a good look and was able to read the rest of the text. Reading the next few lines gave him a funny feeling in his stomach. The next lines on the letter were, "I'm 7 years old. Don't let my size scare you. I'm sweet." Its name, Mama's, was written underneath once more. Eric got a funny feeling in his stomach after reading those sentences. He had dreamt of having his own dog all his life and had just found one. Something he never expected. Everything written on the letter seemed to be true. Mama's was sweet but looked like a big pit bull on the outside. But Mama's had something different about her than other pit bulls. The dog had a certain calmness and friendliness to her, which made Eric feel like he had a special connection with her. But anyway, what was he supposed to do now? He couldn't just take the dog, right? Eric started to panic, but then he had a good idea. Mamas sat calmly in her place with her tongue hanging out of her mouth. She didn't bark, but instead waited calmly for Eric to take action. Eric was anything but calm. He had just found a pit bull while he was with two other dogs who weren't even his own, walking around a park. On top of that, he had to go to the office that same afternoon. In a nutshell, panic. But Eric had a good idea. Eric had looked around to see if there was anyone in the area, but there was not. He had his laptop in his backpack, so decided to put it to use. A great idea which helped him out in the end. From his own Facebook page, he shared that he had found a pit bull which he wanted to help but wasn't too sure how to do this. Eric knew that his friends in the area looked at his Facebook regularly. "I found this dog tied to a tree close to the boathouse in Prospect Park," he wrote to start his post. "There's a letter on the tree saying she should be taken home. Who should I call?" He continued. It didn't take long for the messages to start flowing in from his Facebook friends. One of his Facebook friends was even kind enough to get right in the car to come help Eric. Eric's friend parked his car outside the park and helped Mamas out to the parking lot. The two were going to bring Mamas to a safe place where she could be examined. The fact that Mamas was staying so calm could be because of something else. Maybe she was in pain. Eric and his friend wanted to know for sure. The two rushed to Scene Casey Animal Rescue because they wanted Mamas to be examined by an expert. Mamas was able to walk, but she was very slow. It could have been because of the pit bull's weight, but Eric wasn't too sure. It looked like it was more than just that, something the two wouldn't discover until later. They didn't expect Mamas to jump in the car so easily. You wouldn't expect a dog to trust someone that wasn't their owner so quickly, but this wasn't an issue. Mamas jumped into the car without hesitation and seemed excited. Once they got to the animal rescue, there appeared to be something else the matter. According to the vet, Mamas had gotten very lucky. While examining the dog, the vet discovered that she had a bladder infection and hadn't been spayed yet. Eric started to get worried, but the vet told him this wasn't necessary. Mamas could receive care and there wouldn't be any complications with the treatment. The vet also let them know that she would be suitable for adoption within a week. This sounded positive, but according to the Animal Rescue Organization, several animals are left to their own devices. The owner told them that he received numerous phone calls every week about dogs and cats found abandoned in boxes. This was heartbreaking to Eric, but there was good news. Eric had a hard time with it, but he needed to go into the office that afternoon. On top of that, he still had the two dogs he was pet sitting with him. With pain in his heart, he said his goodbyes to Mamas and left. While sitting in his apartment that night, he couldn't get the pit bull off his mind. Was this a sign from the universe that he needed to adopt the sweet dog? Eric decided to visit Mamas every day. She was doing well, seeing as she was getting more and more energy each day. Even the owners of the shelter were extremely happy with Mamas. Everyone loved this sweet dog. Not only Eric and the shelter were happy with Mamas, there was something else happening. The post that Eric had put on Facebook hadn't just been seen by his own friends, it had gone viral. Comments were flowing in and it was shared by many. The chance of finding the original owners was huge. This got Eric back to thinking. He had such a good bond with Mamas, should he just adopt her himself? He stuck with his gut feeling that it wasn't a good idea. With his busy job and frequent trips, he wouldn't be able to give Mamas everything she deserved. Eric decided to get the idea off his mind and another owner quickly volunteered themselves. Mamas was in fact so healthy that she was allowed to stay at the shelter where potential owners would be able to adopt her. Eric was happy and realized he had an important message to share. Because Eric thought about adopting Mamas so much, he came up with an idea. He consciously chose to not Mamas despite all the love he had for her. Eric wanted to make it clear to others that you can't just bring a dog or cat into your home without taking careful consideration first. On top of that, he wants to emphasize the importance of always adopting cats and dogs from a shelter. This can save a dog or cat's life because so many are left behind. And Mamas is a perfect example. Even extremely sweet animals are abandoned, simply because owners no longer have the means to take care of them. He also wants to emphasize that it's important to ask around your community or your local shelter for help instead of leaving your dog or cat behind in a park. That's something we can all agree on.